Hi everyone, this is Norman Kochnak here from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnak. A number of people are asking whether we're online, and we are, certainly. We've just waited on a few people. Simon Willis is due very soon. We're actually getting some other people involved as well tonight. But yeah, both Chris Vernon and I are online, and this was going to be the time that we were going to do our normal an Aussie and a POM talking about India, but we're going to obviously make it more of a relevant factor to talk specifically about the second test that starts tomorrow in Chennai. And as you know, this test is going to be quite incredible. Like, again, it's going to be extremely interesting. Quite a few selections. I'd argue, I'll use the word shocks. In particular, Dom Bess and Moeen Ali. I haven't quite worked out. I've listened to both the so-called press conference from both Joe Root and Ajinkya Rahane just now to hear what they have to say about their team selections. It was very clear from Joe Root that they're very happy with their rotation policy, hence why Anderson is not in the team and Broad is. They believe that James Anderson will be ready for the last two tests, which is interesting. So that's one selection change, which we kind of knew about. It says voice is low. Can you hear me now, guys? Is that better? Are you hearing me clearly, Chris?
I can hear you perfectly, Norman. Yeah, no worries.
Okay. All right. So the reality is that James Anderson is out. Broad is in. That's a direct rotation policy approach. Jofra Archer appears to be under an injury cloud, and hence why they've brought in Wokes/Ollie Stone. Ollie Stone being a person of more pace, and Wokes being a more traditional on the stumps reverse swinger, reverse seam. The reality is that he can bat as well. We'll talk about who should go on the side between those two, between Stone and Wokes. So there are two changes. Ben Foakes in place of Josh Butler, which was planned. And then the one that is most interesting to me is the Dominic Bess out and Moeen Ali in. That fourth change. Effectively, 5 players have come in, 4 have gone out. They've got a 12-man squad. India, based on what Ajinkya Rahane is talking about, was quite adamant about supporting both Rohit Sharma. He himself came online, which to me is a pretty clear indication he's in the team. I don't think they're going to change their batting order, especially the top 6. It looks like Ashwin is still obviously in. The one that looks likely to happen, and Jabashir Sen, who is actually physically live in Chennai, he's not on air today, but he'll be with us throughout the whole test series. He'll be physically on the deck on Chennai, finding out what's happening. He saw the likes of Axar Patel. He was actually warming up and practicing and heavily bowling, and it appears as though he will be in the place of Nadeem. I'm assuming that there's no changes with Washington Sundar. He's going to stay on the side as well. The only question is whether Kuldeep gets in there. That's the true indication. It doesn't look like they're going to change at this stage Bumrah or Ishant Sharma. There's nothing to be said about that at this stage. It could be a change, but it is interesting how that hasn't happened. At this point, we've just got Simon's just joined us.
Evening,
Simon, how are you, Simon? We're on air.
Good, thanks. So a bit of technology problems there.
That's all right. And you got a hair? Is it a haircut or a hair grooming? It looks very slick today.
Yeah, a little bit of a haircut there. Yeah, one of my neighbours is a hairdresser, so she very kindly sorted me out during lockdown.
Well, I'm hatless today. I'm almost naked in my head. Actually, it's quite. Normally, my hair doesn't look good at all. My hair's usually sticking up madly. So we were just going through, Simon, Chris, and I, the 4 changes, and actually 5 inclusions, but 4 changes to the England side. And again, James Anderson, we'll go through that again. James Anderson, clearly broad rotation. That's a clear one. That was fairly well noted, although I don't necessarily agree. The one that we've also talked about was obviously Archer's injury. Now, what type of injury is it? Is it knee, or what is the problem with Joffrey?
Elbow.
Elbow.
I think it's something he's had over a period of time. And it kind of sums up why his speeds were down in the second innings. You know, he's only clocking 135 or thereabouts. So, yeah, he was obviously carrying a bit of an injury at the back end of that test.
Right.
He had it strapped up, didn't he? He came in with the tape on his shoulder. So you think that they're probably more of a precaution, had an injection, and they're probably thinking third and fourth test. Not going to risk him for the second test if we don't want to lose him for the last two. So
yeah, okay. I get that change. It's injury based. I understand that. If I'm being honest with you, because Archer left the side and Anderson is also out of the side for Broad, I would have honestly, my first thoughts are I would have had Anderson and Broad both play, to be honest, because that would have been a perfect opportunity. I think you even mentioned earlier, Chris, that Archer will be there all throughout the Test series, and it's not his fault, but he's injured. I thought that was an opportunity to bring both of those guys in, but anyway, that hasn't happened. Then you've got Wokes coming in, Wokes and or Ollie Stone. Now, Ollie Stone is the faster of the two bowlers. Wokes is a more traditional reverse seaming batter who keeps it accurate. I would have argued that if Archer's out, that Ollie Stone would have been a like-for-like replacement. And I think that's probably likely still to be the case, but Wokes is in the mix as well, I guess, just in case they've got some doubt as to that. I think that Ollie Stone... Mark Wood, what happened to Mark Wood? Why was
He's been arrested. He's back in the UK. So he went to Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Okay, so but he would have been probably the first choice if Archer was out in normal circumstances. Then, of course, I mean, folks, Butler, that was well discussed. That was well in plan and trained. But the one that really shocked me was Bess and Moeen Ali. And they actually, the way that I just saw the interview that Joe Root has put together and Rahani's press conferences. I'm not sure whether you've seen it. If you're watching my channel, you would have seen them and you would have been well versed in it. But anyway, that's your decision. The reality is that Joe Root said quite clearly that it was based on what he classified the word form. Now that it wasn't based on, it was certainly no injuries. There's no change in the pitch. There's no understanding it. And I mean, I'm not Moeen Ali. Maybe he was meant to be in the first test, but wasn't quite ready, perhaps. And they decided he's ready now. But I find that an interesting selection change, don't you guys?
I do, yes. But the more you think about it, I think in Sri Lanka, Moeen would have been very close to starting in the first test if it wasn't for COVID. And then obviously Dom Bess has come in and taken wickets, so it's hard to drop someone. I just felt watching him bowl in the second innings that he looked tired. You know, he's bowled a lot of overs. He's looked tired, and therefore his performance did dip in that second inning. So maybe they're thinking, look, let's get Moeen in now, freshen Dom up and see where we go. It certainly doesn't make them any weaker. In fact, I think it makes them a stronger side because Moeen would have been in my test side at the start, not just for his bowling, but obviously the batting depth as well on a pitch that, you know, looks like you need as many runs as you can. So I see that as a very positive inclusion. From a seam bowling point of view, you know, from what they're saying and the strategy that they've used, and Ollie Stone looks the obvious choice. I wonder how much reverse swing will play on their minds. You know, that might come into it, and therefore that could work in Wokes' favour. And again, with Wokes' batting, that will make the batting even deeper. So it's an interesting one. My gut feel is that Stone will get the nod, and you know that'll be great because I've known Ollie since he was 16, 17, so it'd be great to see him after a few injuries getting that opportunity.
Yeah, but okay, I get you've got a very strong logic to what you're saying. We'll get Chris's point of view in a minute, but look, I'm very adamant about this, and I'm still concerned about the amount of change to their bowling line, regardless of better or worse fits. You virtually replace virtually the entire bowling line, haven't you?
Yeah, and you know, I messaged Chris this morning saying, you know, I hope England aren't getting too clever here. You know, they've done some really good stuff, and for me, when you've got a winning team and you know all the great teams, you know, you think about your Australian sides and the West Indies teams that dominated for eras, they never really made substantial changes. You know, the core of the team was there. And they played. So that's a little bit at the back of my mind. I'm a little bit worried at the amount of change after winning the first test match.
Yeah. I mean, we just had on Sky News Australia, we had Catherine McGregor, who's the host. I've been on the show many a time. I hope to be on very soon again. Had Ian Chappell on. Now, would you believe it's been 50 years since the 70-71 Ashes series, which he talked about quite heavily. And he resonated with me yet again. He said exactly what I'm saying. He had a bit of a dig at teams that changed their sides for the sake of change. Rotation, I'm sorry, is not a real change. It's not necessary. It's more convenient. It's more high performance related. Now, whether you believe in it or not, it's not the reason why you should be changing a winning side. I'm sorry. I still believe that very firmly. And your concerns, I think, are more than warranted. One change, okay, they planned for Broad and Anderson, that's their decision. But when they had Archer's injury and then they had the best scenario, that's too many changes. Regardless of the so-called sophisticated logic of it, I think once Archer was out, they should have left Anderson in and brought Broad in. That to me would have been, if they want to really nail the series of what Chris always says, you're nailing it there. You're bringing in Wokes or Stone, not really in the series at all at this point. Best has changed with Moenelli, even though Moenelli may be a better bowler. There's something light on there for me, and even with Broad, he'll take us some time to warm up. He's not going to be firing for the first second. Anderson didn't over bowl, so I'm sorry. I don't think I think they've stuffed it. I think that's my honest opinion. Okay, Chris. Well, you've been very quiet. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it makes a change, doesn't it? No, I think that. I think that it's a tricky one. I agree with Simon. I think that Moeen would have been penciled in to play in Sri Lanka if he hadn't got COVID. And from what it looks like with the selection here, is that they want to play him in the subcontinent. And Best has done okay, but I think he was fortunate in the wickets he took, and I'm not taking away from him because I'd love to be out there taking fourthers for England and winning Test matches, but it looks like that they probably had him in always, and at the earliest opportunity when they saw him being match fit and ready to go, that they were going to bring him in almost regardless of how well Best did. Sorry, the Broad and Anderson thing, it's tough, isn't it? I think that the one thing that it seems that Root and Silverwood and the management system there, they're very, very confident and very they back their decisions and back their ability, and I don't think that they're going to, if they sat down today and spoke to us about it, they would say we've picked 14 blokes that are all ready to win games of cricket for England, and we're not going to change our decision on it. And Broad bowled very well in that first test for Sri Lanka, and let's face it, I don't know how much the Australians know about Broad a little bit, but the sort of his the way he's seen in this country is that he's up for it. He's a real competitor. And he's a sort of bloke that will be sat on that. He'll be carrying drinks out there in the first test. He'll be hating that. He wants to be playing cricket. And so if the Indians think that he's not going to be up for it or he's going to be coming undercooked, then that certainly won't be the case of him.
But can I just stop you there for a minute? I get your point totally. That it's not about, it's about bowling partnerships that I'm thinking is the failure here. And Anderson and Broad have got a renowned bowling partnership for virtually a decade, whatever amount of time it's been. That's what's failing. It's not about Broad not being up to it, not bowling well. I've got no doubt he will bowl well. But that's him alone, and he's bringing in other rather fresh or raw, not the winning combination. I just don't think that's right. It goes against the fundamentals of a cricket bowling partnership. Now, Simon, you have to agree with me here. That's in your training, you have bowling partnerships, and a Lily Thompson. You name the partnerships you want to mention. Bolt. Southie, whomever you want to mention, they're a bowling partnership. McGrath, Warren, and the fact is, Broad and Anderson. I know they're getting older, but they're a bowling partnership. This is the ready-made time for them to come in with Archer injured, and Wokes and Stone. I argue relatively untried in India, regardless of what you say. So I think there's an element.
I was thinking about it this morning. I don't know what Simon's view on it as a left field. Do you think that they could drop Lawrence, bat Moeen at 3, bat Wokes at 8, and play both of them? Do you think that's depending on the pitch? Do you think that's something they might look at? And if Wokes is going to strengthen that batting, and let's face it, he's going to bat at 9 if he plays. He's got a Test 100. He averages mid-30s at Test cricket potentially.
I think they're very clear in their game strategy since Chris Silverwood's come in with Joe Root. And I think he said it in an interview the other day after the Test match. It's very simple. They've got to get 400 regularly on the board, and then have a variety in their bowling attack to put the opposition under pressure. So I don't think they're going to change that, and therefore I don't see Moeen batting up the order. I think it's, let's remember these guys have won 6 Test matches on the trot here. away from home. They're doing some stuff right, even though we're questioning some of their decisions along the way. They're very clear in how they're going about it, and that's something that not a lot of people really respect. And that they all talk. You talked about bowling partnerships there, Norman, and I totally agree with that. But nowadays, 17 Test matches, that they're looking at bowling packs. Yeah, so it's not just about one or two bowlers. It's actually about your bench players. Having bench players that can come in straight away and do the job. So they'll have every confidence in their decisions on the back of their journey so far, and that's what makes it intriguing viewing for the rest of us. There's lots to look forward to.
Yeah, that's very true. Just let's go away from England for a moment. There is some. I'm looking at some of the questions. Obviously, they're keen on finding out more about India, which I get. But they are talking about one thing that mentioned broad average in Asia is not good. Is that a factor? Generally, I'm talking. Is that of any concern?
I mean, it obviously it is a thing to look at. But I mean, how many tests would he have played in Asia? I mean, he's a swing bowler. He's a Duke's English new ball swing bowler. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Australian averages, a lot of the New Zealanders, the South Africans, their averages are going to be higher. And 36 certainly isn't awful. And how many tests has he played there? It's and I think the general consensus with Broad and Anderson is that they're getting better. Look at Jimmy's stats since he turned 30. I think he averages 23 with the ball in Test cricket, taking nearly 400 wickets. I mean, it's just staggering, really. And Broad.
It's not that staggering because he's not on the side. It's just a bit weird,
I think that England would have taken the view before the start of the series is that the third test, the day-night test in a brand new stadium, is one to target as something that they can try. And India haven't played much day-night cricket. We've played a little bit with the pink ball. I think that would have been the test that they thought we can win that test. And I think that Archer, push come to shove, he might have been able to play in this test. In fact, he's had an injection. It's not and I'm not saying he's fit, but I think that they've rested Anderson and Archer just to make sure that we can go in full strength for that test and see if we can win that test. They're probably looking at as well. We've got 3 tests left in the series. We've only got to win 1 to not lose it. And looking at how we played in the first test, and I still back India to probably win the series, but having watched that test and how we played and how India played, I think that we're a good chance to win 1 of the last 3. Just because if we can win 1 of those tosses and get runs on the board, I can't see it being out of the question that we can win 1 of those test matches. I think the third is a big chance.
I'm almost going to say, I am going to say it. I think it's almost like England are quite happy to concede the second test in a bizarre way.
No, I don't
agree with that. I think you're just throwing that one out there.
3 bowling changes, resting people and all that. Come on. I mean, what is this?
They're not. As I said, as Simon said, they're picking a squad, and what's the point of picking a Test match squad if you don't have the faith in them to go and win it? And I don't think they're conceding it. I think they probably looked at the pitch, and I think that the reason they've named a 12-man squad and not named their playing 11 is because they're not 100% sure what the wicket will be like in the morning. If it's going to be a bit hard and a bit quicker, they might go with Stone. If it's going to be if it's going to be a proper dust bowl and a real sort of Bunsen burner, as a couple of the English guys like to call it, then they might just say, well, Wokes can bowl and reverse it, can bowl a bit straighter, bring the stumps into play, and they might go with that there. So
I think it was a very interesting comment after the Test series where Virat Kohli mentioned the ball, because they've changed the ball. And he was complaining how soft the ball went, which didn't allow his spinners to be in the game for long enough. So from Broad's point of view, reverse swing, that will definitely help him. I know he averages 36, but maybe the previous ball didn't reverse as much as this one's showing. There's no doubt the tactic for England, get to about 30 overs, and then that ball was reversing. So, I think that that is a key factor in this game. Yes, the pitch, but I think the ball has played a significant part as well.
And ultimately, the toss. That's going to decide almost the winner of the match, I would argue. Yeah. It'll be pretty hard for either side to come back and beat the side who's batting first, as long as they bat well.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a significant matter. All right, let's move on to India. Now, England have come out and mentioned their 12. India haven't, as far as I'm aware. I haven't seen anything. Rahane was very strong in his press conference about the support for Rohit Sharma, even himself indirectly. Obviously, Kohli. So they're not going to change it. I don't believe they're changing their batting. There's been some mention about Agarwal, but I don't think they're going to change it. They're likely to keep Washington Sundar in. It's intriguing because when the first test finished, I would have thought there'd be more changes in the Indian lineup than the England lineup. And in fact, it looks like it's the complete reverse. It could well be that India may only have one spin bowling change and perhaps a fast bowling change, depending on Bumrah and Ishant Sharma. We don't really know whether there's anything niggling there. There's no mention of it. Again, I'm very fortunate to have Debashis on. Pity he's not here now, but he's briefed me very well. He's been watching the sessions from afar, and it's very clear that Nadeem looks to me to be hanging around rather than bowling. And Akshar Patel, yet again, like Moeen Ali, was meant to be selected in the first test. So that's a very logical change, but that's about it. And it's intriguing.
I think Indians have got a problem with their bowling attack and the fact that you say that England are resting and rotating. I don't think they can do that with Bumrah. I think he's the X factor. I think he's the one. I know they've got Siraj in the squad. I know they can call on Thakur. I just don't think they can afford to not play Bumrah, and especially in the first 2 or 3 tests. He's the guy that if I'm waking up at 4 a.m, we're batting. I'm thinking if Bumrah's the one with that new ball. Sharma, they might look to rotate. I know he brought a lot of control. I don't see them playing Akshar and Washington Sundar. I think they're the same slot. I think if Akshar plays, I think Sundar and Nadeem will go out and they might play an extra seamer, or they might play Kuldeep. The Akshar might play for Sundar, and then they might bring Kuldeep in for Nadeem, and then that gives them the left arm turning away from the bat option, as well as then the Chinaman as well.
So I was going to say that's the logical. Totally logical. It's totally logical, but there's something not right with Kohli's selection. He wasn't selected for the entire Australian series. Yet again, for the first match, you can't have confidence saying he's going to be put in the side, even though we may have a learned approach. There's something not right there, because the first test, are you suggesting that Akshar Patel and Kohli would have played if they both were in?
I honestly think that's what they would have done. And if you looked at what happened, is that the night before the test match, they called up 2 leg spinners, or a left arm spinner and a leg spinner, because I'm assuming that the physio would have said Aksar's not playing. And so I would assume that the night before the test, they've called these guys up as 2 guys that turn it away from the right-hander, purely because they wanted him in the same way as England want that. They've got their theory about what side they want. I'm pretty confident if you spoke to Kohli off the record, he would tell you that first test would have been Akshar Patel and Kuldeep would have played. Because why else? Why wouldn't you have picked Nadeem or the leg spinner? I can't remember. Is it Thakur as well? I can't remember.
No, I know who you're talking about. No, it's not him.
Why wouldn't you put them in the squad if you didn't have any intention of playing them? So I'm guessing, and I don't know what Simon thinks, that their intention would have been to play Kuldeep and Akshar, but Akshar injury, kind of messed up that, because they wanted to have a guy who could control it and turn it away from the bat as well.
But it's interesting how you could have a player that wasn't in the Test squad in Australia suddenly deciding a whole lineup around him.
Yeah, but it's the Jadeja, isn't it? It's having that guy that turns it away from the bat. Look how Jack Leach. I said at the start of the series that if we've got any chance in this series, Jack Leach is the key, because turning away from the bat. Look at the ball he bowled to Rohit Sharma. They're hard to play, those balls, and I think that they saw him as the Jadeja man replacement, and that's a key figure in a test match in India, and they had to find someone to try and replace. They had to try and replace it.
But I'm not denying that logic, but at the same time, my head thinks a player that's not the side then deciding to make up the team completely and making major changes because of a player that's not even in the side in the first place is a bit beyond me. I'm sorry, even though it's a Jadeja replacement, I get that. Anyway. I don't
think it's a major change though, Norman, is it? It's just left arm spinner for left arm spinner. It's not like Nadeem bowled out of his skin and you're dropping him, because he's taken wickets. So I think the major talking point will be who is the third spinner if they play it. If they don't play the third spinner, then who's the seamer? That's the biggest debate for me. Like Chris said, the batting lineup I don't think will change. I think they're going to give this batting lineup 3 test matches probably, and see how it goes. But Yeah, the balance is their key thing at the moment. There's no doubt they're struggling to fit that Jadeja balance.
So are you both then? I mean, Axel Patel looks like he's going to fall over in. Are you both suggesting then that Washington Sunder's not in and Kuldeep's in? Is that your final thoughts?
I think they'll leave it really late. I think they'll wait until the covers come off in the morning and make their decisions accordingly. But I just think variety in your attack in the subcontinent is crucial. That's my own opinion, and England have shown that with their attack in the first Test match.
Okay, so I mean, I'm a Kuldeep fan. I wanted him in the Australian series, and I want him in the first Test here. Surprisingly, it almost sounds like I'm going against him by saying Washington is in, which may be the right jinx he needs to be put in. Maybe I need to not back him and he's in. Maybe that's the curse here. But look, I'd be happy if I want him in. But then Washington Sundar, he's a bowler. I know he's I'd argue he's an all-rounder. Do you think that he's going to be a loss if he's not in the batting lineup? Is that going to be a loss to them?
I think that first and foremost, he was picked as a bowler. He strikes me, and I've literally seen him play once in Australia, once here, that he might sort of end up being not as good, but almost turn into that sort of Ben Stokes kind of started off as a bowling all-rounder and ends up as a batting or a batter who can bowl. It seems, and you need to see a bigger sample to work out exactly. But I think that it's just a problem there because they brought him in to bowl and to score some useful runs, not to rely on his batting. And he didn't even bowl in that second innings. You think when England were going for it and trying to set up a game, that if they saw him playing a key role in the second Test as a bowler, why wouldn't you bowl him 15 overs and try and get 3 for 40 or 3 for 50 just to get a bit of confidence? I think they'd want to play Pandya. I think they'd look at England in that first Test, and although Stokes didn't bowl a lot, he took a couple of wickets and adds that balance and just takes the pressure off Anderson and Archer in that first Test. And I think India will look at that and think, is that something that we can replicate, or can the likes of a Hardik Pandya add to our attack? And I think Simon's right, it'll come down to the wicket and what they think in the morning. And I think that England have said the same with Wokes and Stone, that we don't know we'll make a last minute decision probably just before the toss, and I think India will probably do the same.
Okay, fair enough. So what are you saying? What's your thoughts at this moment? Who would you have in or out of the India side?
I would, if what little we know is suggesting the pitch will be a spinner, then I think they'll go Aksar and Kuldeep, and I think Sundar and Nadeem will go. Batting wise, I wouldn't be changing it. I think someone like Rohit Sharma, I'm an opening bat, and you have bad games, and you don't necessarily do anything wrong. He nicked a decent ball, and he got a pretty unplayable ball from Leach. So, and he's an X-factor player in India. The only thing is, could he go, if they're not sure about Rahane, could they move Sharma to 5 and bring Agarwal into open? And then you might get the best out of Sharma in the middle order against the spinners and keep him away from the new ball. But the guy averages 19 Test cricket in India. He's not got a massive problem against the new ball, has he?
No. I don't think they're going to change the batting line. That's pretty much the way that they think. It's interesting because on the so-called community tab, which part of my channel, I've started to put little questionnaires, and the people are still watching because they're reacting when I say something. When I said something about Rohit Sharma, they got quite uppity with me, which I probably deserve. But the reality was that it's provocative. It's a very emotive set of selections. The likes of Rahane, Kohli, and Rohit Sharma. When people say something against them, it causes a stir because they've got great faith in them, and deservedly so. They've all done brilliantly for their country. Pretty risky or pretty daring to have them not on the team. But Agarwal is a lot better at home than we all know. He's a sensational player. He's had some fantastic innings, and he won't be a disservice having the side at all. But yeah, I think you're right though. Washington Sundar and Nadeem, especially Nadeem's out. I think that's for sure. Aksar's in. That's definite. But that then creates a Kohli Washington Sundar change. So be it. I don't think they're going to change Ishan Sharma because he's a very tough cookie. He'll be rolled out no matter what. So they're my thoughts. Now, I have a comment here. I don't know how relevant it is, but I'm going to say it. Do you know Marcus Lawrence?
Yes.
He's having a good laugh. Someone's called you Chris Vernon, the AKA Mason Mount. I don't know who Mason Mount is.
He's a footballer. He's a good-looking fella, so I'll take that.
Plays for Chelsea.
Wish he was Liverpool. There we go.
He's got a house as big as Chris's, so that's why.
Right. Is it okay? Well, he's lost on me. I don't know who Mason Mount is. I'll go and Google him later. Look.
Do you think India will? Do you think India will persist with Sharma? Just because I know there's a week off between tests, but he's not in his 20s. He has had injury problems, and if they only play 2 seamers, that's quite a big workload potential for him. I'm saying if he's probably their biggest. He swings the ball. He's very accurate, and that third test I think is going to be playing on their minds. And I personally would play him, but I think that they've got a headache working out their side balance about how they manage their seamers, because I don't think those guys can get through 4 tests. So
I don't think they can think about managing their seamers. They're 1-0 down in a test series. They've got to win the test. So they've got to play their strongest side to get back into the series. So, they'll gamble. They'll gamble. Hope he comes through this one. And who knows? Under lights, 3rd test match, they'll be saying, right, if we can win the next 2, and then it wouldn't surprise me if they produce the flattest thing ever on the 4th test. It's just the way it is. So, I think they're just looking at this test match and will select accordingly.
The reality is, and this is Dabash's sense word, that he would know better than anyone else. There's no doubt that he's playing. He will go hot coals to play. He hasn't played the entire Australian series. He's recovered. He wants to play all 4, but he'll play the 2nd test without a doubt. The X factor, if you want to call it, Mohammad Shami could be back by the 3rd test, and that's a significant return. Mashadov, I don't know where he's at. He's also there. So none of them are ready for this test match. Siraj is a worthy replacement based on his Australian form, but I think Sharma's almost the first bowler picked, regardless of Bumrah, because Sharma's got his 300 test wickets. Pretty hard to shake him. It's such a different world, as you said. Anderson, broad rotating, both players should be both on the side, and Sharma, who's there's some doubt about is going to play. So there seems to be more stability, surprisingly, in the Indian side of this test match. You could argue, based on sheer ins and outs. It just sets up a very good match yet again. I've never been so, forgetting India alone, but I've been never so interested in the way that England play as well. They've been sensational. They shocked me. The best situation still doesn't sit well with me. I don't know. I get it. I think he played well enough, despite going off a little bit in the 2nd innings, to deserve another go, but they've made the decisions. And yeah. So Moeen Ali, will he bat high in the order? Where will he bat?
No, I think that, I just chucked out earlier about whether they'd pick, if Lawrence plays and he'll stay at 3, I think that just from a coaching point of view, you've got to back your lads. And, this Dan Lawrence has hardly ever batted at 3 for Essex. And I think if you chuck him in for a test match in India, and he's expected to fail, really, if you then drop him or down to 7 after 1 test, I think that can just be a bit of a punch in the gut. So I think they probably said to him, look, with Zach Crawley out, you've got 2 tests, about 3. Don't worry about it. You've got 2 tests. And I think just a little bit of confidence will back him that. And, Moeen Ali, he opened the batting in Dubai, I think went to Pakistan or India last time. And I think when you're looking to get the best out of your players, I think Moeen Ali coming in at 350 for 5 against a tiring bowling attack is probably where you're going to get the most out of him to come in and sort of counter attack and be really positive. So I'd be surprised if they don't bat him at 7 or 8, probably 8. Yeah, 8.
England are very clear on their selections. So each position, they'll have a clear kind of job role. So they won't just change it around willy-nilly. They'll pick people to fit the role. They won't want to change the whole batting lineup. So the rest of it's pretty stable. Folks comes in for Joss Buttler. Moeen will come in and bat where Bess is. It just gives them fantastic depth. That's the thing. So yeah, takes the heat a little bit off the upper order. Gives them a bit more confidence further down. So no, I think it's a very strong addition to this England team, definitely.
So, Simon, we've talked about Selwood on a number of occasions already. You've obviously worked with him.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say any secrets here. But obviously, there's a Yorkshire attitude. We've learnt that. Bat as long as you can, grind away, do all that. I get all that. It's interesting how Ian Chappell made it very, very clear. Again, he's Jeff Boycott. He must have been a fan of Jeff Boycott because he slammed him. So he's not a great player. Even though he averaged 48 He's not a great player, and he gave it to him. I think he's been given license to kill him. I think it's quite incredible the way Ian Chappell's going. I've actually had discussions to get him on these shows, and he and Greg Chappell. I know Greg Chappell very well. He's very close. He's very keen, and he's watching very closely. Ian Chappell, if you're listening, you're due on, pal. You're a great bloke. You and I are very good friends with Neil Harvey, and I'd love you to come and talk about Neil, to be honest. But let's hear your thoughts. I want to see you say what you feel about Jeff Boycott. Not that you're going to hide it, I know that. The reality is that, there's that. Go ahead, Simon. The Yorkshire attitude.
Yeah, look, they play tough cricket. There's no doubt about it. Their reputation over the years speaks for itself. And there's a saying over here: strong Yorkshire, strong England. And we're starting to see that a little bit at the moment. Chris learned his cricket in Yorkshire, but he actually moved down after in his playing days to play for Middlesex and then to go and coach for Essex. So he moved down here. That's where I started to work with Chris when Chris was second team coach at Essex, and we used to play. There you go, dual teams together. So me and Chris worked together a hell of a lot over a couple of years, and even then, I remember
Chris, for the viewers, just to make it clear, is it Chris Vernon or who?
Chris Silverwood.
I know.
I played in a game. I played in one of those games where Simon and Chris Silverwood had both coaches, and I think it was Durham, and Chris Rushworth and Mark Wood over the bowling. So that's probably yeah. And I remember hitting Rushworth before, and then I didn't think I saw a couple of the balls from Mark Wood that he bowled. But no, it was.
Chris has learnt from some really good Yorkshire coaches. One in particular called Steve Oldham, who was Darren Goff's coach for a number of years, and you could just see then his passion for coaching. Some people go into coaching because, they've got nothing else to do after cricket and they want to stay in the game. Chris, there was no doubt that he had this connection with people. He wanted to help people get better. He was very ambitious as a coach as well. He wanted to get up the ladder, but, he would be there rolling his sleeves up, doing the lonely hours with players in the nets or talking to them one-on-one. So there was no doubt that he was going to go up, the ladder from a coaching perspective. I think from a Yorkshire point of view, they think things through and then they believe strongly in their strategies. And that's what goes for Chris. He will listen to a number of people, but then once they've decided the route they're going to go, they're going to stick with it for a period of time. They won't chop and change. And that's what we're seeing with Chris and Joe Root at the moment, and it's going very well.
Well, Joe Root sounds like he's not backward and coming forward either. He's pretty adamant about the plans, isn't he? It's not just simply Chris. It would be largely Joe as well.
Yeah, I think he's really grown as a captain under Chris Silverwood. I think when he first started, there were comments about him coming across as a little boy in some of his interviews. And maybe that was because Trevor Bayliss' style is very much to leave the captain to do the front work. Whereas I think Chris has identified a need for Joe to focus on scoring runs. First of all, he's selected in the team as a batsman, and then, captaincy comes after that. So I think Chris has tried to take a lot of the pressure off of him, whether that be media, whether that be talking to players, whatever else. And, full credit, Joe's scoring runs and looking like he's really enjoying the captaincy at the moment.
And it's interesting I saw a report when the likes of Ganguly, Shane Warne, and I think it was Mike Clark were talking about coaches in particular. And they were all adamant they're not coaches, they're managers, player managers. And what you're describing, I think, without saying it, is player management. Joe Root perhaps has a slightly not as strong approach and needs not so much help, but needs someone to be yin and yang, or with him at least. That's player management, isn't it? So,
yeah, I think that's the skill of the coach, to identify what the captain and the team needs at any given time. Alex Ferguson is the best at it. History, he would go up there and defend his players when he felt that they needed defending, or he'd go out there and be quite open about, their performance, from a critical point of view. He had that that flexibility, and he knew when the right time to deliver the message was. And that's what the top coaches do. The higher you go up, generally it's more about management and less about the technical stuff that probably first got you into coaching.
Absolutely. So back to Indian, there's a lot of comments in the messaging about defending Ishant Sharma quite strongly. And I think rightfully so, because I'd argue he's gotten better as he gets older too. I don't know his stats perfectly well, but I believe that there's a huge improvement in his stats, and his willingness to play to the death is crucial. And he would have been in Australia undoubtedly if he was fit. Others got their opportunity, such as Siraj and the like. Well, Siraj got his opportunity because a number of people fell over, including Shami and Yadav. I think people don't talk enough about the fact that Mohammad Shami's been really missed. He's a gun he's a gun all over the world, but he's particularly good at home, and he would have certainly caused some grief for England in the previous Test match. He's a perfect bowler to foil Bumrah, and they're missing him greatly as well. And I talk about partnerships. There's a great partnership there again. A good example where it's fallen over. Even though Ishant Sharma's good, Ishant Sharma wants to be the lead bowler, doesn't he? So does Bumrah. So you've got two lead bowlers going. That's not necessarily a good partnership, I'm afraid to say.
Well, it's interesting when you see Sharma took the first over, didn't he? And it's silly things like that, like Broadman, like Jimmy takes the new ball. I wonder who gets choice of ends. It's silly little things that they talk about. Like, I wonder when Anderson and Broad play a Test match. I know they played a lot in England, so they probably don't even talk about ends because they probably know. But it's interesting, like with Bumrah's first Test in India with Sharma, who gets choice of ends. And I think looking at the Indian bowling stats from the last few years, whether if Shami or Yadav had been fit, whether they would have played all three seamers and played two spinners. Because I think that the problem they have is that Sharma in that first Test and Bumrah to a certain extent almost were used to contain or to claw back the run rate after the spinners had leaked. Whereas I think they see that they need a spinner that can tie the end up, like a Jadeja, so that Ishant or Bumrah can come on and try and take wickets, not just keep the run rate down. And I think if they'd had the three seamers there, then they brings that control. And that's certainly the way England are going, isn't it? Use Stokes if you can get 10 overs, 1 for 18 out of him in the day, happy days, job done. And I think that's the problem they've had, is that Nadeem didn't bring them any control, and neither did Sundar. So they've had to use two seamers they had sparingly, but not just to come in. Look at Archer. We kept the run rate down with Anderson, Stokes. Archer, come on, go at 6 and over. But if you can hit two people on the helmet and get a couple of wickets, job done. And I think that's what they want to use Bumrah for, is that X factor impact bowler, not just come on, we need to keep the runs down.
And you're right. I mean, if you put the best Indian bowling lineup together right today in India, it'd be Bumrah, Shami, probably Ishant Sharma, and then Jadeja and Ashwin, and you've got a killer 5 bowlers, haven't you? Yeah. Who work well in tandem. And that if that bowling line had been the first Test, you would argue that amount that England got in runs may not have actually happened. Especially
as Shami's a big reverse swinger as Yadav, and then in those conditions, I think I'd been very surprised if those three hadn't played, if they were fit.
I think if you look at the first innings, though, there were key passages of play where the wickets were taken. In both Indian and English innings, there were 4 wickets in the first 30 overs, I think it was, in all 4 innings. So there's no doubt that the middle period, there's a period where, you're just containing. You're trying not to let the opposition get away from you. And there was a period where those spinners let England off the hook massively. I think it was the second half of the second session. England got away from them, and that was it. Very hard, until the next new ball came. So yeah, interesting to watch how India go about their business with the ball this time.
I think that had been a massive point why Moeen was picked as well. I think that although we won the Test and won it comfortably, I think that Leach will grow in the series. I think that he does get better and he does take wickets, but I think they'll look to, and in Sri Lanka as well, and even in South Africa and in the summer, that I think that Don Best does leak runs. And I think England's tactic always in the subcontinent and with spinners in general, because of the pitches and the conditions, is that you pick a spinner not to leak runs and to contain. And I think they'll see Moeen Ali as a bloke that can come on and keep it quite tight if he bowls well, whereas I think Bess is a bit he will go at 3-4 and over. So I think it's a big thing in the England camp is that our spinners have to keep the runs down as well, so that we can use our seamers as an explosive wicket-taking option, not just, Jimmy, we need you back to bowl 5 overs for no runs to try and stem the flow. So I think
it's it's almost as if England are not expecting to win the toss again. At least not the next match. It's almost like they're preparing for losing the toss. What you're describing is exposing Dom Best to an Indian batting side up in the first innings.
No, I think even in the fourth innings, I think that even in the innings he took four wickets, he does lead runs, he does bowl bad balls, and I think that's key. And the toss is irrelevant because it's a chance luck thing, and England will just try and pick their side.
Let me quote you: the toss is irrelevant.
No, in terms of as in you can't prepare for it. It's a 50-50. It's a luck thing.
That's obvious, but you can't say the toss is irrelevant.
No, it's massively important. I meant in terms of picking a side, you can't pick a side based on what you, because you don't know what the toss will be. So, as I said, I think Moeen would have been playing probably both tests in Sri Lanka if he'd been fit, and I think the fact that he was out ill kind of made them have to change tactics in that respect.
I think for India's sake, I hope Akshar Patel's the goods because they're centering a lot on him, I think, by putting him back in the side now, forgetting Nadeem, who, quite frankly, I don't think should be in the side at all. I understand partly why he was there, but that was a complete mistake. That was their most significant mistake in the first game. All right, I'm conscious of time. I know that, Simon, you have to go in a minute or two, don't you?
Yeah.
Yep. So, look, okay, guys, we've talked enough. I think the fact is India's a lot more stable, you'd argue, team-wise, going in the second test. We don't know exactly. We could have a last-minute shock. One of the bowlers could be out based on the form of injury that we don't know about. Hopefully it's not Bumrah, because that would be devastating to India, I would argue. But we'll see. I don't believe he's injured. I think he's there. Otherwise, we would have heard some murmurings. And Tabashis is running around Chennai like there's no tomorrow. So he'll let us know. All right. Who's going to win tomorrow? Starting tomorrow.
Well, all I will say is there's going to be a result. There has to be a result.
That's about as on the fence as you can get.
It comes down to the toss, doesn't it? I think that if we'll be up
hang on,
you
said the toss wasn't important.
No, I didn't say that. I said the toss is irrelevant in the side. No, Simon's right. There'll be a result. India have to try and manufacture a result. India typically are result wickets anyway, and I think I'm going to be up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning for the early show. Simon needs a bit more beauty sleep than me, so I don't think he'll make it. What he said, but I'm happy to hold my prediction.
Third person.
Can I hold my prediction? Can I hold my prediction till we do the toss show? Just because I think my prediction is based on the toss.
No, I'm asking for I want it on record now. Who you think is going to win?
All right, I'm going to say India because I've backed them from the start of the series. And they need to win. There might be a little bit of tiredness creeps into England's game in this test match is my concern. So be interesting to see.
All right. Chris?
Yeah, I think if on the balance, India are always going to be favourites in a home test match in Chennai. I don't think that's... You can never not say that they're going to be favourites.
The hammer's down.
I'll go with India. I'll go with India, but if England win the toss, then I think it'll be fun. I think that it's going to be an interesting test. I could see it being a low-scoring test. I could see it being a 300 first innings, 350 could win you a game.
And Adam Hollyoak's messaging me now saying it's going to be 9-0 as far as Norman's concerned. He hasn't given up. Don't worry, he's going for it. He would have liked to have been. He would have had a number of other people here, but it's worked out very well. This, to me, is the strong core three that we've got here. All right, Simon, I'm going to say farewell to you. I'm going to hold Chris a bit longer because some want to talk about the T20s, a bit about the IPL. We might linger a bit about that. So, Simon, again, everybody out there in YouTube land, Simon is an amazing addition to this group. His fledglings cricket, which I'm hoping you put on the lower part where your name is. We're putting our Twitter things there. When you put your name in, so I'll put your fledglings cricket. You're not going to get a better coach than what I'm seeing from fledglings cricket. Plaudits from all over the joint. Anyone I've spoken to or have come across, especially of late, have raved about him. I'm even going to go get some coaching off him. See whether he can fix me up. That'll be a challenge.
Well, you coach me, and I'm not playing for England, so I'm joking.
Right, guys, enjoy the rest of the show. Catch up with you tomorrow night.
All right, Simon. Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye. So, Chris, while Simon leaves us, there's some questions about the T20 squad. Do you want to talk anything about that?
Well, I've got a load. Yeah, we can do. Yeah. The one interesting thing with this England T20 squad, and it bugs me a little bit, is that the two best players in the Big Bash, James Vince and Alex Hales, I think 2 leading run scorers, neither have been picked. I know Alex Hales is on the naughty step and he's on bad behaviour. And I get the reasons behind it, but I would have liked, Liam Livingston's gone into that squad, which is he's a proper player.
Well, he's in form. He's in form now. That's the thing.
But he's not in as much form as Vince or Hales were, arguably.
That's true. That's true.
Top order bat. So I think Owen Morgan has, from what we gather in the press here, has put his foot down and said that Alex Hales had a chance. He got another one and blew it again. And therefore, but I think that if you looked at people with who are you going to be more worried about? Alex Hales is probably one of the most explosive opening bats in the world. I'd be amazed if he doesn't open the batting in the IPL for one of the sides this year. And Vince has scored a lot of runs too. And I think in the 2020 series / World Cup year, you've just got to pick your best informed team. And I think that this series in India, it's 5 matches. I think 5 matches.
It's quite a significant series.
In India, in the same year as a World Cup in India, that they've probably gone with 95% or 90% of the squad that they see will be in that touring party, just because why would you not take a side to India and have match practice on the same wickets to take to a World Cup? And they'll be keen for a lot of their guys to play in the IPL, and a few of them will be. Joe Root got omitted from the squad. I know that he's pretty keen to get back into the mix there, but no, I was disappointed that no Hales and no Vince. I'm a big fan of Alex Hales. He's clearly, as most English cricketers who are good over the years, he's a bit of a reprobate. He's a bit of a controversial character. I mean, if you look at Botham, you look at Flintoff, you look at Peterson, you look at Stokes, they've all had these sort of naughty boy attitudes about them. But, if we want to win a World Cup, England's chances improve or increase if Alex Hales has opened the batting, in my opinion.
What about Jason Wright?
Yeah, I think that English cricket's in a very interesting spot at the moment. Is that we've got, especially in one-day cricket, we're just full of luxuries, really. Bairstow's there. He's had a phenomenal few years. You've got the likes of Livingston, Vince, Hales, Roy, Bairstow. Joe Root averages over 50 in one-day cricket and isn't getting a look in. So it's if Butler could open the batting.
But even the others.
So they've just got an embarrassment of riches, I think, in England. Dawid Malan's
you forgot to mention Dawid Malan as well.
So
he's
you're literally trying to cram 6 batters into 3 slots, I think, in the top 3 in England's order. And it's Jason Roy's interesting. He's top quality, but has been a bit out of form. So I think he's in the squad. I've got it here. I haven't heard he's not. So he's in the squad. I can't see, but I assume he would be. He's in the squad. They're going to want him back in form, and they're going to give him every chance to bat himself into form for that World Cup. I would love to see it. I'd love to see Roy and Hales open the batting, but then it means you've probably got to leave Bairstow out, and Bairstow's been phenomenal. So unless you bat him at 4,
just mention Dawid Malan for a minute. He's in there. I really rate him.
He's come in, and I don't think he made his T20 debut for Middlesex until 4 or 5 years ago. He's quite a late comer, and he's come into that side probably just for a chance when there was an injury or someone couldn't play or they rested, and he's scored loads of runs. He's number 1 in the world. He's gone to number 1 in the T20 rankings, which when you've got Kohli, you've got all those Warners, Finches, Sharma's in there, to Morgans, Roy's, go and do that is a phenomenal achievement. And he's got to that point where he's undroppable. They can't not play him. Like, he has
Where
to play.
were they batting? First drop?
Three, I think. Yeah. So I've probably got 5 openers to fill 2 slots. You've got Roy, Hales, Vince, Bairstow. You know, Butler has done well opening the batting in the IPL and has opened the batting for England. You know, where do you play them all? And I think England are going to go into that World Cup as certainly close to being favourites, but it's hard to say. I mean, India will probably be favourites on home soil, but England, Australia are going to be right on their tails, aren't they? There's some really quality T20 sides around at the moment.
Okay, that's a great summary. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And the Indian side, we could talk forever about their squad. They're going to have a plethora of people, especially at home. That's pretty hard to work out their team as well, to be honest. As far as
which is why I think with a T20 World Cup, I would just be ignoring who they are, and I would literally be picking. It's the same as a football tournament. There's been talk this week about the European Championships. Just pick a side that is in the best form. Like, forget who they are, forget what they've done in the past. Just go in with form, and I think that's a pretty good benchmark to be going on, and that's what they should look at doing, I think.
Yeah. All right. That's a good summary. Okay. Lastly, before we sign off for tonight, in the eve of the test, which we're going to have our pre-day 3:30 in the morning, or 3:15 in the morning scenario with you and me, and Debash's, yeah. The other thing, very quickly, about the IPL, with the auction coming out on February 18th, which is literally some 6 days away. We've done 4 sessions between you and me about the IPL. We've got 4 to go.
Yep.
And they're going to be delivered very soon. And that's going to be very interesting. And then we've got a huge update of people being put into the mix for that auction. We'll have our 4 sessions coming up over the next few days. Will be delivered on this platform, and then on ultimately a pre-eve so-called IPL as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm keen. I enjoy it, and I read the comments, and mostly people seem to be appreciating what we talk about. So, you know, I think it's difficult. Obviously, Simon, I, and Adam and Smokey, obviously as Englishmen, to come on, and you know, I think we've called it pretty fairly so far. It's obviously harder for that to come across when we've won. I think that, you know, India are gonna win a test match in this series for sure, and you know, it'll be I'm looking forward to sort of breaking that down and criticising the English team or performance as and when it comes, because one thing I've learned over the years of England, that we'll probably get annihilated in one game in the series. It might be tomorrow. I think the series is really interesting. You know, I predicted 2-1 India before the start of the series. I've made that prediction based that I thought India would probably win the first test. Based on the first test, and I'm not being biased, but I really see England potentially winning another test. Just if they play at that level, and Root's batting how he is, and you've got Stokes and the bowlers, I really can see England winning another test, and it's going to be really hard for India to stop them doing so.
But having said that, this is the counter what you said, which is a fair point. If India win the toss, they go under that, they score big.
Yeah.
Pressure on Root. Root not fails, but has a low score, which he's kind of due. Plays so well. That could turn things around very, very quickly. And with a bowling lineup that's kind of chopped and changed for whatever reason, it could actually happen quite quickly, couldn't it? The reverse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a momentum thing, and as I said, the toss. Say the tosses go 2-2. Say India win 2 of the last 3, and we win 1. I think that, as I said, if England are playing this well and that confident, I think it's really hard. India are going to have to play right at the top of their game to stop us winning another game, and that's why, you know, my prediction, maybe I'm swaying towards a 2-2. It could be very interesting. I'm not saying England are going to win, and I'm not biased at all. I just see that England are playing that well and that confident that I could easily see them winning another match.
Excellent. We've got some great comments. There's a whole range of things in there. There were obviously some people swaying towards England winning, some swaying towards India winning. There was a question mark about Bumrah being injured. Now, I have not heard anything. I don't think so. It'll be a bombshell if he isn't picked tomorrow, but we just don't know because it kept rather quiet. All right, thanks for that, Chris. So Chris and I are going to be planning our IPL stages. Don't forget, February 18th, there'll be an IPL auction, which will be all over, especially leading into it, and posted. And obviously the test matches are going to take up the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. So the 5 days in between here and the IPL auction will be all tests, with some IPL coming smattering of. You'll see our last 4. We've delivered 4 of them to you. We're going to deliver the next 4 the next few days you'll see them on the platforms at certain stages of the day. All right, everyone, thank you for your time. I'm going to have a bit of a chat with Chris now offline, but again, really appreciate your comments. We can't get to all of them, and I apologize for that. If we had enough time, we'd go through every single one, but we can't. But we are constantly, when we're on screen, we're seeing the questions right in our eye shot. So we do see them. So don't forget to make comment. And please get those viewers up. We need people to have a look at this. Send a message out to everybody. View, like, and share, and particularly share in your WhatsApp groups, whatever you've got. Let's get the growth of this channel happening, because I'm doing it for the right reasons, and that's to give you as much information as possible. All right, we'll see you tomorrow morning for the pre-show. Thanks, Chris, for your time yet again. Chris has been excellent.
Pleasure.
Simon's been excellent. We're signing off now. So this is Norman Kochnek from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnek. Again, share this through to everybody. This is a great platform to work with. Well, goodbye, everyone.
Cheers, guys.